I truly love the job of being United States Senator, but in my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term. The people of Illinois have honored me with this responsibility longer than anyone elected to the Senate in our state's history.
TCCI also is emblematic of what we've tried to do within state government with regard to economic development over the last number of years.
Too often I've heard from families, friends, and neighbors who have been hit hard by this tax, forced to sell land, equipment, or their entire farm just to pay the bill. And too often, those sales lead to farms falling into the hands of distant owners, sometimes even private equity firms who have no ties to our communities, no stake in our soil, and have no history in our fields.
According to figures from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, nearly 3,300 people were killed and over 300,000 people were injured in car crashes involving distracted drivers in 2023.
When I was 16 years old, at our local YMCA, where fully grown men were allowed to undress in front of us. Yes, men were allowed to undress in the locker room in front of my underage teammates and I. When I asked for help from my coach and the administration, the response I got was, if you're uncomfortable, you can change somewhere else.
I was invited back to Belgium by the countries of Belgium and Luxembourg who were having a, quote, celebration of the Battle of the Bulge. And so I was with a few other surviving veterans, presented actually to the King and Queen of Belgium.
And so today I come here with a simple message. Our administration seeks trade partners on the basis of fairness and of shared national interests. We want to build relationships with our foreign partners who respect their workers, who don't suppress their wages to boost exports, but respect the value of their labor.
That's all just ahead in this week's edition of the Illinois Channel. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and once again, I'm joined with Jeff Berkowitz of Public Affairs TV in Chicago. And Jeff, right now we have breaking news. Today, as we tape this on April the 23rd, the state's leading senator, Senator Dick Durbin, just announced shortly before we are recording here that he would not be running for another term. As you and I discussed, that he would be probably making a decision shortly after Easter. We discussed this last week. Senator Durbin put out a video. So let's start with taking a look at what the senator had to say.
I truly love the job of being United States Senator, but in my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term. The people of Illinois have honored me with this responsibility longer than anyone elected to the Senate in our state's history. I'm truly grateful. Right now, the challenges facing our country are historic and unprecedented. The threats to our democracy and way of life are very real, and I can assure you, I'll do everything in my power to fight for Illinois and the future of our country every day of my remaining time in the Senate.
So that was a video that Senator Durbin put out announcing he would not be seeking re-election. He was first elected to the Senate in 1996, so he is not only the longest serving senator in Illinois history, U.S. senator, he's one of the longest serving senators in the history of the United States Senate. I mean, by the time he leaves, he will have been in office for 30 years. And most of the senators serve about 2, no more than 3 terms, but he will have served 5. So, Jeff, what do you think is the impact, first of all, on his retirement? And of course, then let's take a look at some of the people that might be vying to replace Senator Durbin.
Well, for a long time, he's been in the shadows of Chuck Schumer. I mean, he's number 2. He's the whip. He's not a very vigorous whip, but he's the whip. And so there'll be a lot of shuffling to replace him, some of the youth movement. Slowly but surely, the Congress is getting rid of their octogenarians. There are a few left, but Nancy Pelosi on the House side, basically gone. Excuse me, Durbin now gone. 30 years in the Senate, but another 14 in the House. That's almost 45 years. I think he had a state job, not elected office before. He's never held a real job. No wonder he's not familiar with the private sector. He's never really been in the private sector. So
Yeah,
what do I
Senator
think?
Durbin, well, he was in the United States Congress, I believe first elected in 82,
Right.
and he served as the Illinois, I think it was a parliamentarian in the Illinois legislature. So as you say, I mean, he was a lawyer, but he didn't even practice law really of any consequence before he took a government job and then stayed in the government service. Off the top of my head, I can't point out to any major things that he has accomplished during his time in Congress. I would say to his credit that over the last approximately 20 years, Senator Durbin, as the lead senator in Illinois, has upheld his end more than the other senators that he has served with. When you go back to the time that we had him with Barack Obama, but Barack Obama was only in the U.S. Senate for like 4 years and then started running for the presidency right away. We had Roland Burris, who was an appointed senator to fill out Barack Obama's term. He never was really carrying his weight. And Tammy Duckworth, has been in office for a while, but I still think that when we look at the preponderance of what has happened, including things behind the scene, Senator Durbin's contribution has been more, I would say, just more almost behind the scenes than what we can point and say he has significantly done. He was a leader in getting Illinois to ban smoking cigarettes in the bars. So that's one thing, certainly. I'm sure there's some other things that don't come to mind, but overall, is there anything that you can think of that he has made a lasting impact that he might be his legacy?
No, I mean, look, he's a nice guy. Came on Public Affairs about 20 years ago, did a nice show. So yeah, as a person, he's a nice guy. As a senator, if you're really being objective, there's nothing in foreign policy that stands out, is there? I mean, I don't know of it. Is there anything in domestic policy that stands out? Really, we didn't really elect U.S. senators he did something about smoking, okay? Something, I don't know what. So you really, the Illinois senators now for some time is junior senator, now senior senator Tammy Duckworth. Can you think of anything that Tammy Duckworth has really done to distinguish her? And I don't know, how long she's been a senator now? 6, 8 years. So Illinois has not been noted for senators since I think Everett Dirksen, maybe Chuck Percy. Chuck Percy had a bit of a name. But, Peter Fitzgerald did some important things in terms of the U.S. attorney who was appointed. He had a fight for that. That U.S. attorney, Patrick Fitzgerald, was there in unprecedented
and poor
12
Mark
years.
Kirk had a stroke that disabled him basically for the preponderance of his 6 years in office. And that's why I say, I should have mentioned that. So Dick Durbin really was the primary representative in the Senate. It's supposed to be 2 senators, but when you look at who he served with over about a 20-year period, for one reason or another, Senator Kirk having a stroke, Barack Obama running for the presidency, Roland Burris being appointed and by Rod Blagojevich, so he was always under kind of a cast of that. When we look at Durbin's tenure, I would give him credit, as I said. I remember, by the way, that he got a grant of something like $300,000 for a small community in southern Illinois who had been using a 1948 fire truck. Well, new fire trucks cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they couldn't afford to buy a new truck. Durbin got them a grant. Now, that's a real significant impact on people in that area to have modern firefighting equipment. It's not the kind of thing that makes a legacy for, what happened on the national scene. But I do give him credit for working behind the scenes and getting things like that done.
Well, he might have done, Terry, to be the other side of that coin. Maybe if Senator Dick Durbin, when he had been involved in the Illinois legislature, maybe if he'd used the bully pulpit of being a U.S. senator, maybe if Illinois was not so overtaxed, maybe some local government could afford a fire truck. So going out and finding $300,000 because he and his party have overtaxed, overregulated, basically brought the state of Illinois to its knees. I'm sorry, Terry. I don't give him any credit for that. I mean, he should have been doing more to liberate free. Excuse me, Terry. He should have been doing more in the U.S. government and in the Illinois government to liberate free enterprise, not destroy it.
Yeah, here's the thing. He was in both times where the Democrats were in power. He was the number 2 senator. But, here's something significant that I would argue he could have done more for. And he could have helped organize other senators in a bipartisan manner. The locks and dams on the Mississippi River need to be rebuilt and to get funding for those. And that's not a partisan issue. America makes billions of dollars in profit sending corn and soybeans and coal down the Mississippi to the port of New Orleans for export. And we'll be talking about tariffs a little bit later. When we do that, but we're using locks and dams north of St. Louis on the Mississippi that were built in the 1930s, in some cases, 1940s. They're literally falling apart. And that's something that would have been a lasting impact for the nation to get the billions of dollars we need so that the United States can continue to make billions of dollars in exports. That's the kind of thing I think that it's not so much often what you did as much as what you could have done, having been the number 2 Democrat in the Senate behind Chuck Schumer. But when I look at so much of what happens in government these days, in the Senate, and I've covered the Senate when I was with C-SPAN 30 years ago in Washington, it's just a lot of talk and very little action, and it really is, I don't want to sound namby-pamby, but there are many issues that are not partisan that if you worked across the aisle to say, what can we do together and get things done for America? And I have to say, not to put all the blame on Senator Durbin, but as a leader in the Senate, maybe he could have reached out more to accomplish those kind of issues, not to make it all about the locks and dams. There's a whole host of things that America needs that could have been addressed.
Well, Terry, let's use this to transition to our next topic, which is the replacement for Senator Durbin. He could have done so much more. He could have done so much more in terms of speaking out against the devastating wrong policies of his party. He could have done so much more to speak out against the open borders policy of Joe Biden, which I guess was Dick Durbin's policy, to let essentially 8 million illegal immigrants walk across our borders, run across our borders, gotaways. 8 million is really the reasonable estimate in the last 4 years or higher of essentially unvetted immigrants. Now we're dealing with the problem. How do we find which ones are the worst of the worst? And there are some very problematic immigrants here who are involved in gangs and other activities and violence. how do we discriminate between the good illegal immigrants and the bad ones, and at least deport the ones who are who are a danger to this country? I haven't heard him say a damn word about that.
Well, the
Not in
thing,
the
I
8
think a
years.
fair criticism is also is that unlike when we said Everett Dirksen and Chuck Percy, and I would say both of those were standout senators in the U.S. Senate. When you and I remember, and we've talked about before, when a significant piece of legislation, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, was passed, it was passed because Everett Dirksen got Republican senators to vote for that. And it was because Republicans were voting on that bill that overcame the objections of the Southern Democrats who were voting against it. The criticism of Dick Durbin I would have, and when you look at the tenure that he had, it'll be 30 years, as I say, by the time he leaves, he was too partisan. He would almost always vote the party line, and very rarely did he ever buck the system. And as you said, when you have such egregious breaking of the law of Joe Biden holding that border open, where was Senator Durbin criticizing his party or getting the behind the scenes Biden to change that policy? I didn't see him do it. He could have spoken out on the Senate floor on any number of issues. So I think, unfortunately, that might be more of his legacy, that he had the power to affect more change, and he didn't take. He was too often just pushing partisan issues. He was a longtime leader in the Senate, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He was the chairman of that until just recently when the Republicans took control.
Well,
But
that's
again,
a
he
whole-
didn't
that's a
speak out
whole-
against the FBI or the prosecution using lawfare against Trump.
Worse, he allowed a lot of nominees for the judiciary to go forward without saying a word when a number of them, and they're getting appointed by Biden, are very problematic. Didn't say
Very
one damn
problematic.
word.
In
And
questioning by
he
John.
ran the judiciary. For a while, he ran that judiciary committee, and so let's transition. We want to spend
Yeah,
a whole
let's get
show
on
this.
to who
Let's go
might
to
come
his.
now and what difference might it make.
I mean, look at. We said last time we ran through some of the leading candidates.
Well, one candidate, although Alexi Giannoulias, he's the state treasurer, I tend to think that Alexi may be more likely to run for governor. He may wait a little bit. Now, he did run for the U.S. Senate before. So what are your thoughts on Alexi?
Yeah, nobody's mentioning for governor because until J.B. Pritzker decides, and he hasn't said what he's doing, whether he's running for re-election or not. We all know he's running. We all know J.B. Pritzker is running already for president in the 2028 race. The only question before us is, will he decide it's better for him to run
Will he
as
who? Will he JB or
it's better for Governor Pritzker to run for the presidency unencumbered by any role as a continuing governor of the state of Illinois, or is it better to have that as a base that in 2026, instead of stepping down, instead of not running for re-election, run with the idea he'll be there, he thinks, for 2 years, and then he hopes to be president? That's the only question. What does he do now?
I might throw out just a speculation here. The other thing J.B. Pritzker could possibly do, which Nelson Rockefeller did, is resign from being governor, so that he could go out in the campaign trail early, and then get credit for allowing the first woman governor of Illinois and a black woman, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, to become the
Well,
governor.
yeah, give her some
Which might give
experience. and
J.B. Pritzker more chops with black voters across America.
Will give former Representative Stratton some experience to build her resume, because I can't think of one thing she's done in the last 6 years as lieutenant governor. Talk about notable for lack of accomplishment. Just said that about Senator Durbin. I mean, nothing. Can you think of one thing that Lieutenant Governor Stratton has done that's worth discussing in the last 6 years?
No, and I would also say, I mean, there are things that she could have championed more to develop her own identity. When the governor is speaking, often she is there and she'll go up and say, whatever she says at the particular event. But I don't think she has carved out her own identity, which of course would not be at odds with Governor Pritzker, but she could have been more pushing for something like women's health or something on a consistent basis. Anyway, I throw that out. That's something J.B. Pritzker might do.
Okay, so this is one reason he's moving this along so we can get to some other topics.
Well,
This is
we
one
might
re-
also look, by the way, we have Treasurer Frericks. Yeah, he's like 6'7". He also
Anything else he's done? I
speaks
don't know.
Chinese
He's treasurer.
fluently.
He's not going to be the next governor. Let's move on, okay? He's not going to.
Well,
I don't know.
I
what
was
he's
talking
gonna do,
about
but
the
he's not gonna
Senate.
be-
We're talking about Senator Durbin.
Well, he's
who
not.
could
He's not
replace
going to be
Durbin.
right, and he's not going to be the next senator. Okay, so we need to spend a lot of time. Let's go to the people who have a shot in the Democratic Party of becoming a nominee. We talked last time about because Stratton has basically done so little. The one of the top people in terms of pick to get the nomination is Lauren Underwood, Congresswoman Underwood. Not that she's done a lot as a congresswoman. Can you think of anything? No. You no longer have to do anything significant in terms of freedom, in terms of spending, in terms of inflation, in terms of illegal immigration, in terms of any of the problems that we've talked about, in terms of dealing with China. No. So this is what you do is, oh, she's got a good association with Barack Obama. Look at number two. Some would say number two. As we've said in a recent poll, these two people were in the low 30s, did best out of a group of four. The second one is Raja Krishnamurthy, congressman from the 8th Congressional District, Northwest Suburbs in Chicago. What has Raja done? What's his big accomplishment in 8 years? A lot of people don't know this. He's accumulated $19 million in his campaign fund so he can run for the Senate. He's basically been preparing to run for the Senate for the last 8 years, going out there bringing in money. I mean, most of the congressional incumbents, Democrat incumbents, have $2, $3, $4 million. Now, Raja, nobody's talked about it. I didn't even mention it last time, because everybody knows about it. $19 million. Hey, Raja, what are you doing? Did you do anything about illegal immigration? Did you do anything about crime? Did you do anything about education? Yeah, your district is as bad as any other bad district in the state of Illinois, where only 1 out of 3 kids read at grade level. Did you do anything about China? Yeah, you're on a major committee. What did you do? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So those Lauren Underwood, Raja Krishnamurthy, and then we got Robin Kelly, another
Well, let me
congresswoman from the
just to
Chicago
bring
area.
up Raja Krishnamurthy here for a minute. Congressman, he's did run a business before being elected to, which gives him some real world experience. The other thing, Raja Krishnamurthy is of Asian Indian descent, and that could be a factor. Sometimes when you have, I think the Indian community in America is a growing community. They're highly educated as a community, as I make a overall generalization. But that could help him in a run for the Senate. And you mentioned he served on the special committee in Congress looking at the influence of communist China inside America. So that gives him an edge of being a little bit more moderate and conservative and not just
But Terry,
one other
Terry, what did he
person.
do? What did he do? Did he use his bully pulpit to raise the issue of Goshen having a basically a communist
To
company?
raise the issue of what?
Goshen,
Ocean?
this Goshen, Gotion.
Oh,
You may not
Goshen,
know
the
about
battery.
Goshen. Yeah, subsidized by the Illinois government, subsidized by the federal government. It's basically.
Well, that whether he wait a minute, whether he
What did
did
he
or
do?
not, Jeff. I mean, I don't know that anyone's going to care about that when we go for the Senate. Whether you're opposing having spy balloons fly over the country, I think people would would matter to people. But no, I don't think anyone's going to vote for him or against him, depending upon what he happens
Well,
to
did
say
he do
about the
anything
battery maker.
strategically?
If
Terry,
he comes out and
is-
says we shouldn't have the Chinese buying farmland next to our military bases. You know, that's the kind of thing that would give him some chops, and because he served on that committee, would give him some credibility.
Well, yeah, see, it's nice to serve on a committee, Terry. You know, if you're there for several years, for 4 years, 5 years, some of you want to know, did you ever talk about China as being a strategic threat to the United States, economically, militarily?
I don't know
And
if
what
he
did
has.
you
He may
do?
have, and I just didn't notice it.
Well, he certainly hasn't made it very loud, or you and I would have
Congressmen
known.
don't always have the greatest platform to get the word out. They're frustrated by that. He would have a bigger platform as a senator. One thing,
Okay,
do you,
well-
we can move along and get to property
Well,
taxes.
let's just
if you
mention,
wish.
before you do, let's just mention, so Juliana Stratton's there, and Lieutenant Governor. So we have four relatively undistinguished Democrats: Underwood, Krishnamurthy, Kelly, and Stratton. And then we got Susana Mendoza as comptroller, who has done some things. We could talk about her if we have more time. We will in the future.
Well, that's one thing
And we
about it.
got
What do you
you-
think about Susana Mendoza in terms of, I don't think anyone knows what she does as comptroller, and it's not the kind of position that you can really make a lot of headlines on. But she is Hispanic, and there's obviously a growing Hispanic community in Illinois. So then the question was, instead of would it be better for the Democrats to nominate an African American, or would it be better for them to nominate a Hispanic or Raja Krishnamurthy from, as I said, Asian Indian descent?
Well, here's an idea. Here's an idea. So we said we have Susana Mendoza, Comptroller Mendoza there. We have State Giannoulias, Treasurer there. Is there a Republican
We didn't
candidate?
mention Kwame, although last time we both said Kwame
No,
is
he's not
probably
running.
likely not to seek either
He's not.
office. He'll stay as
Let's focus on the
Attorney
six
General.
people who are. Let's focus on the six who seem to be running. Seem to be. Nobody's circulating petitions yet. I mean, has any of these people, as I've said, done anything to distinguish themselves to become one of the two people from the state of Illinois to represent us in a club of 100? Distinguish on foreign policy, on immigration, on inflation? No, zero, zilch, okay? Any other foreign or domestic policy? Has the Republican Party in Illinois managed to come up with a credible candidate for the U.S. Senate? I don't mean somebody who just says, okay, I'm running.
Well, I think
Somebody
it's a little
who-
early
hold on.
so far to say, have
No,
they
it's
come
not.
up with a credible candidate?
Gary, can I finish the thought?
Well,
And then you can-
yeah, but let me get a word in
Real
here.
quick.
The
Well, you
thought
will.
is that, yes, there are any number of Republicans who would be credible. Darren LaHood
Well,
would be a credible candidate. Richard Porter would be a credible candidate. So to say they'll have the Republicans yet come up with them, we only today got the word that we were anticipating, that Dick Durbin officially announced that he's not running. So I wouldn't,
Well-
if I were a Republican seeking to run for the Senate, I would not have announced my candidacy prior to Dick Durbin.
to have a credible campaign. Mom, M is for message, O is for organization, M is for money, MOM. Who are these credible candidates who have the organization, the ability to build one, to get out the message, and to well, money, message, and organization? Who has it? You mentioned LaHood. I don't think anybody thinks he's going to give up a very safe congressional seat to make a risky bet on a
Well,
statewide
sometimes
Senate
people's
run.
arms are twisted, and they can be convinced if they're guaranteed to get X number of dollars. And with Donald Trump in office, even if he were to lose, he could be appointed to a federal position if he were a losing
Well,
candidate.
that could be, but I don't think there's any indication.
I'm not
that
pushing,
anybody's-
by the way, Darren LaHood. He's a great guy. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's been in the Congress now for roughly 6 or 8 years. So he had served as an Illinois state senator before, and his dad had long been in the Congress. So he knows the lay of the land. Richard Porter, who you know, I've met. Richard Porter could be a credible guy why don't you talk a bit about
but there's
Richard
one-
Porter,
there's-
because people don't necessarily know who he is and why he might be a credible Republican.
Well, just before we do that, say there's one problem. almost everybody who's talked about him and he himself talks about a run for governor, not a run for the Senate. He could run. I'm just saying nobody's saying that, including him. And most recently, when he was
Would he
interviewed,
be a credible? Of course, we might have. Would Porter run if J.B. Pritzker decides to stay and run again?
well, some people say that's why he's not come out yet because he's waiting to hear what JB said. And he has said recently
So
in an
then
interview
it's
last
less
week.
likely, you're saying. And then, so then if J.B. Pritzker says I'm going to remain as governor, would Porter then be more likely to run for the Senate, or would he just sit on
Yeah.
the sidelines and
Well,
not?
very well might, but then the Republican Party has a problem. Who is their credible candidate to run for governor of the state of Illinois?
Well,
There seems to be a dearth of credible candidates of the Illinois Republican Party to run for Senate and to run for governor, even though J.B. Pritzker, as I've said before, is arguably a very weak candidate in terms of his performance. We'll get to that, I guess, next week in terms of looking at property taxes and other things he's
I
not
think the
addressed.
Republican Party in Illinois is about like the Democratic Party nationally. They don't have a real leader. They need to coalesce about what are the issues they're really going to champion. And they need to do a better job of recruiting people to come out as candidates. They're quite a disorganized group, I would say now. So, yeah, it's.
Well, this is my point. My point is,
and so
now's
many
the
of the
time to do
leading
it.
Republican funders have left the state.
Oh, I didn't say it was an easy job to go out and recruit a credible candidate. I said it needs to be done. That's my point.
Well, it needs to
And
be
the
done,
point
but when
is-
we look at the Republicans who have run over the last 20 years or so for governor and for the U.S. Senate, there just not been a long list of really credible people.
Well, yes, something needs to be done, needs to be done now, because they're so far behind for some of the things you pointed to. The Republicans need to get their candidate
once
out
again,
20 months,
Wrap it up.
20 months early.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least we have the
they-
advances story. We're going to have to get out of here. Folks, give us your ideas and give us a thumbs up on the video. And until next time, Jeff and I will see you then. Take care. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
Happy to take a few questions from members of the media. Brendan. Yeah, for those of you who've been busy this morning, Senator Durbin announced his retirement at the end of his term. I really would just be reiterating what I said in the statement that I put out. Let's all recognize that someone serving us for decades in Washington, D.C., representing the state of Illinois with enormous integrity and honor is something that we should all appreciate, no matter what political party anybody belongs to. And especially in this moment in Washington, where I feel like there aren't enough people who represent the courage and the the genuine honesty that Dick Durbin has represented for us for all these years. But in this moment, to have somebody representing us means a great deal. And I just wanted to, I guess I'm reiterating something that I said in my statement, but I think it's so important for all of us to recognize. And there'll be time, for the next, 19 months or however many more months there are until the end of his term for us to honor him in even grander fashion. But I think it's an important day to recognize great public servants. And I'll just say about my pride in what we're doing here today, TCCI was, the first. TCCI also is emblematic of what we've tried to do within state government with regard to economic development over the last number of years. They knew that things were changing at TCCI, that they had decisions to make. And they reached out and spoke with us, and I think I would describe our response as white glove service. That is what we try to do for all the businesses in the state of Illinois and companies that are thinking about coming to the state of Illinois. We have regional economic development efforts that have been longstanding and doing a great job. The state has gotten back into the business of doing that. And when TCCI reached out, and we had a meeting, Kara Demersion came to my office, Andy Menard was in that meeting, a few others, and we talked specifically about what are the challenges that TCCI faces and what is it that state government can do to make it easier. And so some of the way you make public policy is listening. And we listened, and we started developing the REV program even in that first meeting. And so I'm very proud that here we get to be governor for 6.5 years now. You get to see things come from an idea and a discussion to legislation to fruition. And we're seeing that here, so it's an exciting day for me. Look at this beautiful space that we're in right now, but especially look at the classrooms, and look at what Richland College is doing. Look at the pathways that we're creating for young people to get where they want to go in a career. And that's, again, something that started with one conversation, but that's how public policy gets developed. I think tariffs should be targeted tools that get used where we need to protect jobs or protect industries, perhaps protect national security, and not some broad-based effort to what ends up being raising taxes on everybody in the country. And so I think businesses, the reaction to this, of course, is prices are going to go up. They already have. And costs for businesses, for input products, right? The supply chain that helps to make great products in the United States, some of that comes from overseas, or perhaps a neighboring country, for example. And I think recognizing the problem of that, when you're trying to run a business, all of a sudden costs go up, prices go up, it's going to impact whether or not you're going to sell more product, whether or not you're going to have a vibrant economy. And then add one more thing. Tariffs are on, tariffs are off. Tariffs are up, tariffs are down. Imagine trying to run a business and figure out from day to day how you're going to do pricing, who you're going to do business with based upon where the tariffs are being imposed from. And also remember the retaliatory tariffs, that if you're in another country, you're naturally going to say, well, this is unfair to our products. We're going to put on tariffs for U.S. products that are coming into our country. And so how does that affect sales for U.S. companies? And I'll just say, because we're in Decatur and in central Illinois, that if you're a farmer selling soybeans or selling corn abroad, and you now have some of your largest trading partners are being impacted by U.S. tariffs, and then retaliatory tariffs are put on, we're going to lose farmers. We're going to lose sales of products for our farmers, for our agriculture industry. And we saw that in the last Trump administration in 2018, 2017, 2018, 19, where we lost soybean sales, or our farmers did, to Brazil, because the big buyers overseas of soybeans said, I'm just not going to pay those tariffs, or I'm not going to deal with the problem that the administration's put in front of us, so we'll just go abroad and buy them there. And that is what happens when you put on tariffs that don't have any meaning to them, that nobody knows how to remove them. They're just raising prices for everybody. Your customers go elsewhere. Yeah, let me start with, we run out of money. We allocate a certain amount of money. We don't want to overspend taxpayer dollars. We can only provide so much money as an incentive. And then at the end of those dollars anyway, we have to wait till the next year until a new appropriation. So we're trying to be prudent with our taxpayer dollars while also incentivizing an industry. Those are not incentives. The federal government incentive, the state government incentive, those are not incentives that should remain in place forever, right? They're designed to jumpstart, to make sure that we're encouraging people. And very importantly, the industry, and which we want to develop in the state of Illinois even more, but we're doing reasonably well, I might add. But these are not something that will stay around forever. The price of vehicles, even without those rebates, is coming down. That the electric vehicle companies are producing vehicles that are lower cost, that are still extremely high quality. And we've seen that with Rivian here in the state of Illinois, and with other electric vehicle companies who shall remain nameless. And that, those incentives, I think, again, we want them to stay in place to continue the development of the industry. We're also responsible at the state government level for incentivizing the charging infrastructure that we need in order to support the electrification of transportation. And we're doing that. I don't know if you've seen, but we really have added quite a lot of private industry and with some support from the government, we've added a lot of charging infrastructure so that now range anxiety is less of an issue for people who may be thinking about buying an electric vehicle. So we'll continue to try to provide, again, within the bounds of a balanced budget, which I insist that we must have, to provide those incentives so that we can help build the industry.
Thanks, everybody.
I don't have any comment about Tesla. Yeah, that's the other T word.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
Agriculture is Illinois' most important industry. Nearly 1 million people employed in the food and fiber industry here in Illinois. And Illinois agriculture is critically important to the entire nation. We are among the nation's leaders in the production of soybeans, corn, and hogs. But because of our unique and varied geography and climate, Illinois is also known for growing a wide variety of agricultural products from cattle, sheep, poultry, to wheat, oats, fruits, and vegetables. We even produce specialty crops ranging from pumpkins to Christmas trees. And the vast majority of those products come from family farms. Illinois agriculture products generate over $50 billion annually. That figure includes crop production, of course, but also manufacturing of machinery, food production and sales, renewable fuels, and much more. In a district like mine, agriculture is essential to the survival of each and every one of our communities. Even our urban areas need agriculture, not just for food, but because of the sheer number of jobs and economic activity that is tied to agriculture. Chicago has one of the largest concentrations of food-related businesses in the world. So agriculture is critical to our state's present, but also to its future. That's why I introduced House Bill 1501, a bill to create an income tax credit for the owner of an agricultural asset who sells or rents that assets to beginning farmers. Most farming operations look for a son or daughter to carry on the family farm. My great-great-grandfather passed his family farm to my great-grandfather, who passed it to his son-in-law, my grandpa, who passed it to my dad, who is now passing it on to his children. There are young people in Illinois right now who want to get started in farming but don't always have the opportunity. We need to get that next generation up and running in agriculture. But the bill was not called for a hearing or vote before the deadline this spring. That was House Bill 1501. We need to get serious about supporting agriculture and securing its future in Illinois. Now to tell a little bit more is Representative Jason R. Bunting. Jason.
Thank you, Representative. Good morning. I'm State Representative Jason R. Bunting. For generations, my family has operated our farm near Emmington, which is in Livingston County in east central Illinois. Prior to serving the folks of the 106th District, I was Livingston County Farm Bureau President. As Representative Swanson just said, farming is one of the most important industries in the state of Illinois, but it is also one of the most dangerous. Farmers work with heavy equipment, large animals, and hazardous pesticides, and we do that in every weather condition Illinois has to offer. This year, I am once again sponsoring a resolution to declare Farm Safety Week in the fall. It's a chance to put farm safety in the spotlight and to not only inform and educate our farmers and their family members, but all of Illinoisans about the importance of farm safety. We have to do more. We must do more. Every year during planting season, which is currently taking place right now, and harvest season, we warn our friends and neighbors about slow-moving farm equipment using the roadways. And every year, unfortunately, we still have incidents. This year, I introduced House Bill 3204 and House Bill 3205, which would take our Scott's Law statute, the Move Over Law, which applies to law enforcement and other first responder vehicles, and expands it to farm implements. My bill would require drivers to make room for farm equipment on the roads so they can safely pass and clear the equipment. This legislation would make the roads safer for farmers and for every other Illinoisan who drives the rural areas of our state, ensuring that we all make it home safe to our families. Unfortunately, my bills were not allowed out of committee, so they did not get a vote this year. But our fight is not over. Everyone agrees that we farmers are essential to our state and its people. We should be taking action to keep us and everyone else safe while we perform our important and rewarding work. Thank you for your time. Now, here's State Representative Wayne Rosenthal to tell you a little bit more.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning. As Jason said, I'm State Representative Wayne Rosenthal of the 108th District, former Director of the Department of Natural Resources here in Illinois, and also a former Illinois Corn Marketing Board representative. I'm a fourth-generation family farmer, and with the help from my fifth and sixth generations, we have been total no-till since 1990. Our operation is across Christian, Montgomery, and Macoupin counties. It includes converting anything that annually flooded to timber or wetlands, and other environmentally sensitive grounds are currently enrolled in various conservation reserve programs. My family originally immigrated from Germany in the 1890s. My great-grandfather was the first to farm in Illinois, a tradition I have proudly continued and passed down to my sons and grandchildren. Today I stand here not just as a legislator, but as one of only 7 legislators one of only 7 farmers in the Illinois House of Representatives that are active farmers. I know firsthand what this unfair estate tax means, not just to my family, but for every farming family that I represent. The Illinois state tax falls more heavily on former land than almost any other class of taxable property. This isn't just a tax, it's a threat to our way of life. It's a direct threat to the very families who work hard to put food on our tables and create thousands of jobs across Illinois. Too often I've heard from families, friends, and neighbors who have been hit hard by this tax, forced to sell land, equipment, or their entire farm just to pay the bill. And too often, those sales lead to farms falling into the hands of distant owners, sometimes even private equity firms who have no ties to our communities, no stake in our soil, and have no history in our fields. Illinois state taxes are levied on property physically located here when its owners pass along. Unlike monetary assets that can be moved out of state, our land or equipment, it stays here, and so do the families who care for it. While billionaires and corporations can shift financial assets with the click of a mouse, family farmers cannot move an 80-acre field. They cannot move their equipment across state lines, and we shouldn't be penalized for it. Since 2013, Illinois has taxed estates above $4 million, a number that hasn't been adjusted for inflation in over a decade. Now let's be clear. Both federal and state law exempt property passed to surviving spouse. But when that land is passed to children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews, the very people we raise to carry on our tradition, that's when the tax hits, and it hits hard. Now is the time to pass a tax for this tax relief legislation. The governor has publicly stated his support for our family farmers. We need to hear legislation on the floor and in committees, and that we still have time to do it this session, and this is very important to the family farms here, and the governor supports it, and we need his support to get that through. In 2025, the federal state tax exemption will be nearly $14 million per individual and double that for married couples. But as the federal law sunsets as scheduled, those exemptions could be cut in half, ending even more pressure to these family farms. Much of Illinois land is still owned by men and women who live on it and farm it. But unless tax policies are changed, this will no longer be the case. Most U.S. states currently do not charge an estate tax or an inheritance tax, or have already repealed their taxes on estates and inheritance. Iowa is the most current state that has done that. Under current law, only 16 states charge a state inheritance tax, and 34 states do not charge any such tax. Here's another example of Illinois being at or near the bottom of a list that we should not be on, or want to encourage, if we want to encourage growth in our #1 industry. Only 5 states have a lower exemption threshold from Illinois, with large states like New York having a much larger exemption threshold, which is 6.9 million. Many of our Republican caucus members, as Jason and Dan said, have filed bills for tax relief for the state or the death tax to eliminate the death tax in Illinois. We have a responsibility to pass tax relief onto our family farms, and so that we can stabilize and ultimately save those farms for the family in Illinois.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
Well, thank you all for attending today's event. I want to give a special thanks to our partners who have joined me here to help in our effort to curb distracted driving. Billy Lyons, the Deputy Director of our Illinois Secretary of State Police, Paxton Spresser, Commander of our Secretary of State Police in Region 1, which includes Cook and the Collier Counties, Rita Kreslin, the Executive Director of the Alliance Against Intoxicated Motorists. Rita is a great friend of ours and a great friend of mine who's doing very important work. And while AIM was founded to prevent intoxicated driving, their mission has expanded significantly to include distracted driving prevention. And finally, Connie Only and her son Cole and their daughter Nyla of Rockford, Illinois. Connie's ex-husband and Cole's father, John Hauptman, was taken from their family in 2018 following a crash involving a teen driver. John had been walking across the street in Rockford when he was struck by a 16-year-old who had been on his phone. John, who was taken to the hospital following the crash, unfortunately passed away a few days later. Since then, Connie and Cole have advocated on the dangers of distracted driving. We're going to hear from Connie here in a little bit. I am honored to stand with them today to launch a multi-pronged, one road, one focus effort to combat distracted driving in Illinois and to keep our roads safe. This effort coincides with National Distracted Driving Awareness Month, observed every April. Our goal is to turn Connie and Cole's pain, the tragic pain that is shared by countless others, into action, and to protect other families from the gut-wrenching grief of losing their loved ones to distracted driving. According to figures from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, nearly 3,300 people were killed and over 300,000 people were injured in car crashes involving distracted drivers in 2023. Meanwhile, drivers aged 15 to 34 are most likely to be distracted at the time of fatal crashes. Make no mistake, distracted driving is an epidemic in America. It is the drunk driving of our time. I say that again, make no mistake. Distracted driving is an epidemic in America. And it is the drunk driving of our time. Driving with an open phone screen is as dangerous as driving with an open bottle. Every single time someone takes their focus off the road, even if just for a moment, they put their lives and the lives of others in danger, which has serious consequences for everyone. Distracted driving means any activity that takes a driver's eyes, hand, or mind away from the road. This can include talking on the phone, texting, social media, putting on makeup, eating, looking after children or pets, or using the controls on the car's dashboard. In Illinois, we have some of the strictest laws on the books. Our police officers and state troopers are diligent in enforcing the laws and issuing citations. Since 2014, Illinois drivers have been prohibited from using cell phones while driving unless using a hands-free device. The law bans using smartphones to write, send, or read text messages, emails, or other electronic communications while behind the wheel. Meanwhile, drivers under the age of 19 are not allowed to use even hand-free devices in their vehicles. And just last year, legislation drafted by our office went into effect, making it illegal to use teleconferencing apps, watch videos, or access social media sites while driving. Despite these restrictions, the efforts of law enforcement, and the tragic consequences, distracted driving remains socially acceptable for so many of us. That's why we need to treat it accordingly as the epidemic it has become. We need to do more to stigmatize intoxicated driving, and we need a cultural shift in our collective behavior. As Secretary of State, keeping our roads safe is my top priority. Guided by this mission, our office has pursued various means to reduce the risk of impaired and distracted driving. But it's not just about increased penalties and fines. It's about changing behavior and changing mindsets. That's why we launched a comprehensive distracted driving prevention campaign called One Road, One Focus. Beginning today, the Secretary of State's office is now requiring teens to watch a video explaining the consequences of distracted driving before they receive their learner's permit. This video, which we'll watch in a few minutes, essentially serves as a public service announcement illustrating how the tragic effects of dangerous driving ripples through families, friends, and communities. As part of our One Road, One Focus campaign, we've also rolled out a billboard campaign encouraging travelers to stop texting and to start driving. A total of 15 billboards have been donated and are going up throughout the state. And finally, the Secretary of State's office has received a $77,000 grant from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which we are using to bolster Secretary of State patrols to enforce distracted driving laws in high-volume crash areas throughout the year. The patrols will issue tickets, and their presence will also serve as a deterrent to drivers who may be tempted toward distraction. No text or email is ever that important, and certainly not as important as someone's life. Distracted driving crashes are entirely preventable if people stop using their cell phones, eating, or doing other things that divert attention from the road. Our young drivers are both future leaders and the future of safe roads in Illinois. That's why the primary focus of our larger initiative is raising awareness with our youngest drivers with the hope that they will help reshape the thought process, change mindsets, and challenge bad behaviors. Even one death is one too many, which is why we must continue to raise awareness and to save lives. Each of us needs to accept the safety of ourselves and those we share the road with as our responsibility. We all share one road. Let's share one focus. Safer, distracted driving in Illinois. And with that, I want to see if Rita Kreslin, again, the Executive Director of AIM, wants to say a few words. Rita?
Good morning, everyone. I am, like the Secretary said, Rita Kreslin. I am the Executive Director for AIM, the Alliance Against Intoxicated Motorists. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and be part of this very, very important discussion. AIM is an independent nonprofit organization that was founded back in 1982 by a group of individuals that were losing family members to drunk driving. Our mission is to prevent deaths and injuries caused by chemically impaired or distracted operators of any motor vehicle and or watercraft, and to assist these crash victims in the court system. To educate the public about the dangers of distracted driving, AIM's Beyond Driver's Education program, directed by Samantha Gannon, who is here with us today, has partnered with the Secretary of State's office and other traffic safety organizations to conduct awareness campaigns. Our goal is to highlight risks associated with using electronic devices while driving, many of them the cell phone. And that is the most common use of a distracted driving crash. Visual, manual, and cognitive abilities all contribute to road safety. Whether you're driving, cycling, or walking, each of us has a responsibility to protect those we love and who travel the roads every day. On February 3rd, AIM launched its 6th annual Distracted Driving campaign, focusing on the hazards of using electronic devices while driving. High school students were invited to submit a 45-second public service announcement PSA video. AIM's committee, which includes our AIM board president, Dr. Charles Notzika, who lost his wife to a distracted driving crash, selected the top 5 videos. The videos were posted on social media for voting among friends, family, and their peers. Voting actually concluded yesterday, and the top 3 videos are now featured on our AIM website and our Facebook page. Thank you to all the students who did an incredible job in submitting your PSAs. A special thank you to Secretary Giannoulias for his outstanding leadership in promoting traffic safety. You are making a positive change in our communities. With your teen driver initiative, One Road, One Focus, you are paving the way, and I have no doubt saving lives. Thank you again for all you do in traffic safety and for keeping our youth safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. And before we watch the video, I want to recognize Connie Only, who's going to talk a little bit about what happened to her. Connie?
When I was asked to share my story today, I was hesitant because I'm not a public speaker. Not only did I know that this would be an emotional topic, but I knew anxiety would come along with it because sharing this story is like reliving it all over again. After much thought, I concluded that this is my way of honoring someone who holds an important part of my life. I want to thank you all for being here and for understanding as I tell my story of loss. John Carl Hotman, my ex-husband, was struck by a car while he was walking across the street in Rockford, Illinois. He passed away a few days later. The driver of the vehicle was only 16 years old and had been texting at the time of the crash. I shared over half of my adult life with John. I first met him in Freeport, Illinois in 1996. We were as different as could be. He was a rough, around-the-edges guy from Cicero, Illinois, and I, a simple country girl from Lanark, Illinois. You know what they say, opposites attract. John, being from Cicero, led a much more exciting life. He introduced me to city living, and I introduced him to cornfields and cows. He used to call me his little hayseed. We fell in love and got married in 2005 and started our family. We were blessed with a son, Cole, and a daughter, Nyla. Sadly, though, over the years, our differences became more apparent, and we continued to drift apart, eventually divorcing in 2012. Even though we were divorced, we remained friends. We lived over an hour apart, but we got together often. Over time, we both found new lives, but our connection remained. John found a girlfriend, and I'm remarried. but we would all get together for family fun, to get a bite to eat, head out to the park, or just grab an ice cream treat. John was very energetic, and he loved to play with the kids. He was just a big kid himself. He would run through the playground, chasing them, crawling through all the obstacles, or just engage them in a game of ball or street hockey. He would talk with the kids on the phone almost daily, just to see how they were doing. He loved them and was very proud of their accomplishments. On June 5th, 2018, we went to the park to celebrate John's 47th birthday. Little did my kids know they would never see their dad again. Excuse me. On Father's Day, Sunday, June 17th, 2018, our plans for the day quickly changed. I received a call early in the morning telling me that John was in the hospital. He had been struck by a car late Saturday night while he was crossing Alpine Street in Rockford. The caller told me that John was in critical condition at St. Anthony Hospital. My family and I immediately went to the hospital. The children were not allowed into the intensive care unit, so my husband took them to an area restaurant while I went to visit John. I have no words to explain how hard it was to see him lying there. I'm a nurse, and I knew his condition was grave. Over the course of the next few days, I spent much of my time at the hospital with John and his family. Due to John's condition and the young age of Cole and Nyla, they were not allowed to see their father. After much discussion with the physicians, it was decided to remove life support and attempt for organ donation. I will never be able to erase the memory of watching his body struggle once all the machines were removed. Unfortunately, John's heart was so strong and his body did not stop fighting within the window of the time needed to be an organ donor. John passed away on June 20th, 2018 at 5:38 p.m. with his family and friends by his side. His cause of death was listed as respiratory obstruction due to multi-compartmental central nervous system hemorrhage due to motor vehicle versus a pedestrian crash. I had to go home that evening and have the most difficult conversations. I explained to my children that their father had passed away and that there would be a funeral in a few days, allowing them to see him one last time. The following days were a blur as time was spent with his sisters, making the funeral arrangements and trying to be a support system for my children, as I too was trying to cope with my own loss. After John's service, he was cremated, and later in that summer, we traveled down to Alabama, where John's ashes were spread by his sister and the kids. Studies show that someone is 23 times more likely to be involved in a crash while texting and driving. A void remains. My kids miss their dad. I can't replace the missed phone calls and the fun times they shared. My kids struggle at times to hold on to the memories they have of their father and the shared interests they had with him. Cole shared a love of Star Wars, playing baseball and hockey, and of course, watching the Chicago Cubs. Nyla always looked forward to her visits with Dad. He would have a big hug for her. Their lives have been altered, as many milestones will be missed. Both of them wrote letters to the judge at the time of how they have been affected. I'd like to share a little bit more on John as a person. John loves sports and music. Being from the Chicago area, his favorite teams were the Cubs, Bears, and the Blackhawks. He played guitar and he liked to sing. We all felt that this picture was a true representation of who he was, and we used it for his prayer card at his service. I know that the young man who hit John did not plan on taking a life that night, but the fact is, he did. Distracted driving isn't just texting or using your phone while driving. It's also talking, eating, putting on makeup, and attending to children. Driver distractions are on the rise in our country. It's important for me to share John's story, Had the teenager who killed John been paying more attention, things for my family might have turned out very differently. Unfortunately, we'll never know. Thank you for allowing me to share my story and my family's tragic experience with texting and driving. Our profound loss serves as a reminder of the consequences that resulted from distracted driving. I encourage responsible choices behind the wheel and hope that no other family has to endure the heartache that we've faced and that we live with. Thank you.
Before we watch the video, I again want to thank Rita and everyone at AIM for all their critically important work. And I just want to say for Connie and her son and her daughter to be here to talk about something very difficult shows tremendous courage. And it's very hard to do. And they are doing it for a reason, to help save lives. This story is real. It's a tragedy. It did not have to happen. And it's happening around the country every day, every hour, every minute. So please think about the consequences of your decision if you decide to drive while on your mobile device, put makeup on. You're putting others' lives at risk. So with that, I really want to thank Connie and her family. I'm so sorry for your loss. And we'll watch the video that, as of today, everyone getting a new license will be made to watch, and hopefully it stays with them. So we're ready to go. We want to step back so we can.
Driving is a privilege. It brings freedom and independence, but it comes with responsibilities and restrictions.
Knowing the rules of the road is essential to operating a vehicle safely and avoiding distractions, which helps ensure everyone's safety.
Distracted driving means any activity that takes a driver's eyes, hands, or mind away from the road. When moving 55 miles an hour, it takes just 3.7 seconds to travel the length of a soccer field.
1, 2, 3, 4.
More than 3,500 people die in car crashes involving distracted driving each year.
Each one of them was someone's child, someone's friend, someone's sibling. Each one of them had someone waiting for them at home.
One road.
One focus.
So, I'm obviously John's son, Cole, and on the way up here, I just got my license in November. On the way up here, we talked a bunch about the safety and stuff, and they said a lot of times teens don't like to listen to adults. They didn't ask me to say this. I was just thinking about it a minute ago, and I know I look at my phone sometimes. I mess around with my friends in the car. I'll talk, I'll, reach around. Obviously everything can change really quick, and it's just something we gotta be aware of. As much as an adult can really harp it to us, I think having a connection with, another teen that's been through this situation is really great to have, and everything can change really quick. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. If there's any questions, if not, I want to thank everyone who's here today to talk about this important issue. And again, we are going to do everything we can. We can make people watch videos, we can pass laws, but until there's a mindset change in this country, things will not change. And I think everyone's guilty of it. So our request, we're imploring everyone, please, please think twice before you drive while doing something else. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
Illinois, the 64th district, which covers my hometown, Lakeville, Illinois. We're gathered here today with a shared goal: to protect women in women's sports. For more than 50 years, Title IX has stood as a landmark civil rights achievement, ensuring women are not left behind in educational and athletic opportunities. Title IX was never about special treatment. It was about equal footing. And when it comes to athletics, that means a level playing field. Title IX opened the doors for generations of women to compete, to excel, and to break barriers. Not by competing with men, but competing on teams designated for them against their peers. Today, that legacy is facing serious challenges. And for those who have not read, there's a report from the United Nations titled "Violence Against Women and Girls in Sports" that documents that over 890 medals have been stolen by men in 26 different women's sports. And this report was as of over a year ago. So those numbers are much higher. This isn't just about fairness, it's also about safety. In contact sports particularly. The physical disparities between biological males and females can lead to serious injury and risks. No young woman should have to choose between her athletic goals and her physical safety. To give a basic comparison, this safety concern is exactly why we already have age differences in our sports and youth sports and schools. If we recognize the need to separate youth sports by age for safety reasons, why are we refusing to accept the same basic biological realities when it comes to protecting the safety of girls in girls' sports? It's common sense. This is why I have filed Bill number 4027, the Riley-Gaines Act, to require public schools and colleges that have interscholastic or intercollegiate athletics to provide equal athletic opportunity for members of both sexes. The bill lays out clear requirements that schools designate sports teams as either male, female, or co-ed, and prohibits biological males from competing for or against teams designated for females. As policymakers, we have a responsibility to uphold the principles of fairness and safety for all. And in doing so, we must protect the very purpose of Title IX, not weaken it. And now I would like to introduce two brave young women, Abigail Wheeler and Caitlin Wheeler. And just for those who know, this is Mom and Grandma in the front row here. So we have 3 generations of Wheeler women here today with us. So next, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Representative Weber, and thank you, Representative Deering, for being here and advocating for women in women's sports, introducing these bills. I want to thank you all. My name is Caitlin Wheeler. I was a competitive swimmer for 18 years, and I graduated from the University of Kentucky, where I was teammates with Riley-Gaines. I graduated as an NCAA qualifier, a multiple-time All-American, and an SEC champion. And I've now dedicated my life to defending the rights of women and girls in sports and spaces with the Riley-Gaines Center, protecting fairness, safety, and dignity for women. It's not a Republican or Democrat issue, it's common sense. And the fact that we even need legislation like HB 4027 and HB 1117 should be a national wake-up call. I've trained beside male athletes for most of my career. I know the biological differences, how much stronger, faster, and more powerful they are, and how big that biological gap is. Not to say that women are unequal or not the same, or unequal, we are just not the same. I know how hard women have to work. For every 100th of a second shaved off in the sport of swimming, races come down to the 100th of a second. In soccer, a burst of speed that changes the outcome of a game. In track, a single stride. Or in basketball, it's one rebound or one block. Women train their entire lives to close those margins. That's why Title IX was passed, so that girls like myself could compete on a level playing field. But when males step into those spaces, onto those, into the pool or onto the courts, those efforts, those years of hard work are erased in an instant. That's not bigotry, it's biology and it's common sense. Yet today, the playing field we're seeing is being erased, and we're told that it's no big deal, or it's not really happening that much, or there aren't men competing in women's sports. Just be quiet. But let me be very clear. Laws should never be used to erase reality. A male's self-identification does not and should not outweigh a girl's right to fairness, safety, and privacy in her locker room. This isn't hypothetical. It's happening and it's real. And if you still believe the lie that it's rare, you've been fooled. Remember this: one girl robbed of her place on the podium or violated in a locker room is already one too many. We don't need to agree politically to agree morally. But I would like everyone to ask themselves, would I let my daughter undress in a locker room with a man? Would I make her race against a male for a scholarship? Is that fair to her? Would I force her to move because she feels unsafe in her own locker room? This isn't hate, again. It isn't bigotry. It's basic fairness, and it's about what's right and what's wrong. So I'm here today asking Illinois legislators and leaders everywhere, really, to stand up, not just for the girls here today, but for every girl in the state of Illinois and across the country who's maybe not found her voice yet. We're counting on you to make the right decision, and we're done being silent. We will not back down, and please do the right thing, the moral thing, protect women and girls. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you to everyone for being here today to support the HB 4027 bill. Thank you to the members of the General Assembly who are fighting to protect women and girls across Illinois. Most like to say it's not happening, and that if it's happening, it's not happening that often. This bill is just important. It's not urgent. I'm sorry. This bill isn't just important, it's urgent. It's about restoring fairness, safety, and truth back into women's sports and private spaces. It's about making sure that men cannot take away the opportunities, records, scholarships, and spaces that were fought for by generations of women. When I was 16 years old, at our local YMCA, where fully grown men were allowed to undress in front of us. Yes, men were allowed to undress in the locker room in front of my underage teammates and I. When I asked for help from my coach and the administration, the response I got was, if you're uncomfortable, you can change somewhere else. We are following the law. That is not protection, that is abandonment. And this is exactly why we need this bill. Because the law is being misinterpreted and twisted to incorporate insanity. Girls are being sacrificed at the altar of political correctness. If the law tells young girls to move for grown men, then the law is broken, and that is our job to fix it. Now, the High School Association has made it clear in writing that they will not comply with the president's executive order protecting women's sports and spaces, banning men from them. Instead, they're hiding behind legal confusion and refusing to take a stand for girls like me and my girls from my teammate and girls across Illinois. I am so grateful to Representative Tom Weber and Reagan Deering and the leaders who are speaking out and demanding action. But we shouldn't have to beg for common sense. We shouldn't have to ask for permission to be safe. It's time to stop bullying young women into silence. It's time to defend women's spaces and rights, women's teams, and women's spaces. It's time to pass HB 4027. Thank you.
Thank you to Abigail and Caitlin for being here this morning. I'm Regan Deering, State Representative of the 88th District, which includes parts of Macon, McLean, Piatt, DeWitt, and Livingston counties in central Illinois. As a mom of 2 daughters, I believe every girl deserves the opportunity to compete on a level playing field. My husband and I want our daughters and every woman to feel safe, respected, and protected. And I want them to gain the confidence, camaraderie, and strength that so many girls develop through sports. This is why I introduced House Bill 1117, a measure that would require school sports teams to be designated as male, female, or co-ed, with students only being able to participate on teams that match their biological sex. Unfortunately, the Democratic supermajority wouldn't even allow the bill to be heard in committee, jeopardizing the safety of young women and girls in sports. Last month, House Republicans sent a letter to IHSA asking about their intent to comply with federal policy that clearly prohibits permitting biological men to compete against biological women in sports. The IHSA delayed their response, and when they finally returned a letter to our caucus, they chose to deflect instead of providing information for an actual plan. The IHSA has refused to provide clarity, but it does not absolve them of their responsibility. By siding with radical gender ideology over the concerns of parents, coaches, and athletes, the IHSA is dismissing the severity of the situation and silencing the voices of girls who have trained their whole lives for a fair shot. Fairness in girls' sports is not up for negotiation. Privacy and safety are not political issues. I refuse to stay silent while unelected bureaucrats and politically pressured institutions make decisions that compromise our daughters' future. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
We talked to lobbyist and World War II veteran Dick Lockhart about his recollections of fighting in the Battle of the Bulge and the European theater. This runs about 10 minutes.
Dick Lockhart, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And for those who don't know, May the 8th marks the 70th anniversary of the end of the German surrender in World War II. You were one of the individuals who would have a pretty clear recollection of that day. What were you doing at the end of World War II in May of 45?
The situation was that I had been in combat during the Battle of the Bulge in December of 44 and found myself in due course a member of as a prisoner of war in Germany at a place called Stalag 9B. That prison camp was liberated by American troops in April, and after that I was taken into a camp in France. It was called Camp Lucky Strike. It's a temporary camp for returnees and people in between situations in Europe, military. And put on a hospital ship on the 12th of April, the very day, by the way, that President Roosevelt died, and was taken back to the United States. I was given a 60-day furlough with the admonition that I should go and fatten up because I had been in a facility where I tell people they had a very effective weight reduction program. And
yeah, you mean by that the German prisoner of war camp?
Yeah, with the favorite meal was grass soup, which tasted better and better the longer you were there, but it was not very nourishing. So we were sent home and got reunited with my family during the 60-day period, which we were supposed to take it easy and, like I say, get fattened up because of the hospitals actually were pretty full of really seriously wounded GIs. So when the surrender came of Germany in early May, it was a little bit anticlimactic. Interestingly enough, just as a part of the history of it all, when we were first put into combat in the early part of December of '44, we were told, I was just a private first class, making $54 a month, and your division will be in a quiet sector right now, and we expect basically the Germans to surrender by the end of December. Well, as you know, the Germans did not surrender. They fought on until May, and in fact, a few days later, launched the horrific battle called the Battle of the Bulge, or the Battle of the Ardennes, it's called in Europe, which produced the most military casualties of the war. So
It lasted about a month, starting December 16th, and you were just come off of guard duty. That as I recall, right?
For that, yes. Started at the barrage. The German barrage began at 5:30 in the morning. I just got off guard duty in the German city of Blyolf, which was right on the front lines, and all of a sudden the world was turned upside down. The problem we found, though, when we tried to call headquarters or army headquarters elsewhere in Belgium and Germany, they thought we were exaggerating because we were green troops, and they didn't give a lot of credence because they had already made up their mind that the Germans were going to surrender by Christmas. Well, the American intelligence again failed, shall we say, in a very, what do I want to say, painful kind of way, but it provided me, like I say, with a diet of grass soup, so I lost some weight.
So when actually you heard, you had touched on this, but when you heard the Germans had surrendered, you were back in the United States?
I was back in the United States on the 60-day furlough.
And am I right that when you were captured by the Germans in December of '44, your parents got a telegram that you were missing in action?
Yes.
And when did they find out that you had actually survived?
I'm not quite sure. It was sometime later, though, but word filtered back to my parents that I was a prisoner. That didn't tell them very much, and the fact is we had a lot of casualties in the prison camp. Men died every day, for that matter, but at least I was intact and had not lost any body parts, fortunately. So I did work my way, get back to the United States, only to find that my parents had moved to my mother's parents' home in Ohio. They moved from Indiana to Ohio. And so I knocked at the door at home, thinking they had received some communication that I have been liberated and was on my way home. So there was a lag in time, knocking at my home door, thinking my parents would come to the door. Instead, some strangers came to the door. Fortunately, they told me where my parents were, but it was I guess we've had movies like that or something of that nature, where somebody comes back from long distances for a long period of time and find out other people have decided on another course of action. So anyway, that's
as you and I have done the story before, and it's a wonderful story, and I could go on for an hour, but for this anniversary, I want to say, ask two things. One, as you now reflect back over these 70 years, what do you think about the events of World War II, and to the extent that, unlike the 19 years between World War I and World War II, now we've at least gone 70 years without another world war?
Well, it's interesting you asked that very question because just recently, relatively last year, I was invited back to Belgium by the countries of Belgium and Luxembourg who were having a, quote, celebration of the Battle of the Bulge. And so I was with a few other surviving veterans, presented actually to the King and Queen of Belgium in the castle, and we were treated, I don't want to say we're treated like royalty, but we were treated with an incredible amount of respect and affection by the people in Belgium who realized that their country had been tormented by the Germans for 4 years, and we were part of the liberation of their country. And so I was really very surprised that the countries, those two countries, recognize the significance of what happened 70 years ago. And here I was, Dick Lockhart, Private First Class Lockhart, back in Belgium, but this time meeting with the King and Queen in the castle. Far different than the 70 years previously. You have to live long enough, Terry, I guess, to have some of these experiences.
Well, Dick Lockhart, we appreciate your service, and you're a great guy, and thank you for sharing your recollections.
My pleasure.
And when I look at this audience, or when I visit this incredible country over these last couple of days, I see a people that will not be held back. Now, the most profound responsibility I believe that all of us have is not to ourselves, but to the next generation, to make sure we leave them with a better society than the one that our parents and our grandparents gave us. And this is the world that America seeks to create with you. We want to build a bright new world, one that's constantly innovating, one that's helping people to form families, making it easier to build, invest, and trade together in pursuit of common goals. Now, I believe that our nations have much to offer one another, and that's why we come to you as partners looking to strengthen our relationship. Now, we're not here to preach that you do things any one particular way. Too often in the past, Washington approached Prime Minister Modi with an attitude of preachiness, or even one of condescension. Prior administrations saw India as a source of low-cost labor on the one hand, even as they criticized the Prime Minister's government, arguably the most popular in the democratic world. And as I told Prime Minister Modi last night, he's got approval ratings that would make me jealous. But it wasn't just India. This attitude captured too much of our economic relationship with the rest of the world. So we shipped countless jobs overseas, and with them our capacity to make things, from furniture, appliances, and even weapons of war. We traded hard power for soft power, because with economic integration, we were told, would also come peace through sameness. Over time, we'd all assume the same sort of bland, secular, universal values, no matter where you lived. The world was flat after all. That was the thesis, and that was what they told us. And when that thesis proved false, or at least incomplete, leaders in the West took it upon themselves to flatten it by any means necessary. But many people across the world, and I think your country counts among them, they did not want to be flattened. Many were proud of where they came from, their way of life, the kind of jobs they worked, and the kind of jobs their parents worked before them. And that very much includes people in my own country, the United States of America. Now, some of you are aware of my own background. I actually didn't plan to talk about my background at all until last night at dinner, while my children mostly behaved. We gave them an A- for behavior with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said, I have one request. I want you to talk a little bit about your background. And so I wanted to do that. For those of you who don't know anything about me, I wanted to talk about it. I come from, and I'm biased, the greatest state in the Union, the state of Ohio, a longtime manufacturing powerhouse in the United States of America. My home specifically is a place called Middletown. Now, it's not a massive city by any means. It's not Jaipur, but it's a decent-sized town and a place where people make things, which has been a point of pride in Middletown for generations. It's filled with families like my own, some of whom called us hillbillies, Americans who came down from the surrounding hills and mountains of West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky to cities like Middletown in pursuit of the manufacturing jobs that were creating widespread prosperity for families all across America. They came to Middletown in search of what we call back home the American dream. In Middletown, my parents raised me. My grandparents raised me. They taught us to work hard, they taught me to study hard, and they taught me to love God and my country and always be good to your own. My granddad, who I called Papaw growing up, he typified that. Late into life, he worked as a steelmaker at the local mill, and I know India has a lot of those. Papaw's job gave him a good wage, stable hours, and a generous pension. All that allowed him to support not just him and my grandmother, but his own daughter and grandkids with him. Now, by the time I came around, money was awfully tight, but he worked hard to make a good living for all of us. Now, I know Papaw and Mama were grateful for the way of life their country made possible. Their generation bore witness to the formation of America's great middle class. And by creating an economy centered around production, around workers who build things, and around the value of their labor, our nation's leaders then transformed their country and made thousands of little Middletowns possible. The government supported its labor force. We created incentives for productive industries to take root and struck good deals with international partners to sell the goods made in the United States of America. But as America settled into world historic prosperity it generated, our leaders began to take that very prosperity and what created it for granted. They forgot the importance of building, of supporting productive industry, of striking fair deals, and of supporting our workers and their families. And as time went on, we saw the consequences. In my hometown, factories left, jobs evaporated, America's middle towns ceased to be the lifeblood of our nation's economy. And the United States, as it became transformed, those very people, the working class, the background of the United States of America, were dismissed as backwards for holding on to the values their people had held dear for generations. Now, Middletown's story is my story, but it's hardly unusual in the United States of America. There are tens of millions of Americans who, over the last 20 or so years, have woken up to what's happening in our nation. But I believe they woke up well before it's too late. Now, like you, we want to appreciate our history, our culture, our religion. We want to do commerce and strike good deals with our friends. We want to found our vision of the future upon the proud recognition of our heritage rather than self-loathing and fear. I work for a president who has long understood all of this, whether through fighting those who seek to erase American history or in support of fair trade deals abroad. He has been consistent on these issues for decades. And as a result, under the Trump administration, America now has a government that has learned from the mistakes of the past. It's why President Trump cares so deeply about protecting the manufacturing economy that is the lifeblood of American prosperity and making sure America's workers have opportunities for good jobs. As we saw earlier this month, he will go to extraordinary lengths to protect and expand those opportunities for all Americans. And so today I come here with a simple message. Our administration seeks trade partners on the basis of fairness and of shared national interests. We want to build relationships with our foreign partners who respect their workers, who don't suppress their wages to boost exports, but respect the value of their labor. We want partners that are committed to working with America to build things, not just allowing themselves to become a conduit for transshipping others' goods. And finally, we want to partner with people and countries who recognize the historic nature of the moment we're in, of the need to come together and build something truly new, a system of global trade that is balanced, one that is open, and one that is stable and fair. Now, I want to be clear, America's partners need not look exactly like America, nor must our governments do everything exactly the same way. But we should have some common goals, and I believe here in India we do, in both economics and in national security. And that's why we're so excited. That's why I'm so excited to be here today. In India, America has a friend, and we seek to strengthen the warm bonds our great nations already share. Now, critics have attacked my president, President Trump, for starting a trade war in an effort to bring back the jobs of the past, but nothing could be further from the truth. He seeks to rebalance global trade so that America, with friends like India, can build a future worth having for all of our people together. And when President Trump and Prime Minister Modi announced in February that our countries aim to more than double our bilateral trade to $500 billion by the end of the decade, I know that both of them meant it. And I'm encouraged by everything our nations are doing to get us there. As many of you are aware, both of our governments are hard at work on a trade agreement built on shared priorities, like creating new jobs, building durable supply chains, and achieving prosperity for our workers. In our meeting yesterday, Prime Minister Modi and I made very good progress on all of those points. And we are especially excited to formally announce that America and India have officially finalized the terms of reference for the trade negotiation. I think this is a vital step. Thank you. And I believe this is a vital step toward realizing President Trump's and Prime Minister Modi's vision, because it sets a roadmap toward a final deal between our nations. I believe there is much that America and India can accomplish together. And on that note, I want to talk about a few areas of collaboration today, how India and the United States can work together. First, perhaps most importantly, to protect our nations. Second, to build great things. And finally, to innovate the cutting-edge technologies both our countries will need in the years to come. Now, on defense, our countries already enjoy a close relationship, one of the closest relationships in the world. America does more military exercises with India than we do with any other nation on earth. The U.S.-India Compact that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi announced in February will lay the foundation for even closer collaboration between our countries. From javelins to Stryker combat vehicles, our nations will co-produce many of the munitions and equipment that we'll need to deter foreign aggressors. Not because we seek war, but because we seek peace, and we believe the best path to peace is through mutual strength. And the launching the Joint Autonomous Systems Industry Alliance will enable America and India to develop the most state-of-the-art maritime systems needed for victory. It's fitting that India this year is hosting the Quad Leaders Summit this fall. Our interests in a free, open, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific are in full alignment. Both of us know that the region must remain safe from any hostile powers that seek to dominate it. Growing relations between our countries over the last decade are part of what led America to designate India a major defense partner, the first of that class. This designation means that India now shares with the UAE a defense and technology infrastructure and partnership with the United States on par with America's closest allies and friends. But we actually feel that India has much more to gain from its continued defense partnership with the United States, and let me sketch that out a little bit. We, of course, want to collaborate more. We want to work together more, and we want your nation to buy more of our military equipment, which of course we believe is the best in class. American fifth-generation F-35s, for example, would give the Indian Air Force the ability to defend your airspace and protect your people like never before. And I've met a lot of great people from the Indian Air Force just in the last couple of days. India, like America, wants to build, and that will mean that we have to produce more energy. It's more energy production and more energy consumption. And it's one of the many reasons why I think our nations have so much to gain by strengthening our energy ties. As President Trump is fond of saying, America has once again begun to drill, baby, drill. And we think that will inure to the benefit of Americans, but will also benefit India as well. Past administrations in the United States of America, I think motivated by a fear of the future, have tied our hands and restricted American investments in oil and natural gas production. This administration recognizes that cheap, dependable energy is an essential part of making things and is an essential part of economic independence for both of our nations. Of course, America is blessed with vast natural resources and an unusual capacity to generate energy. So much that we want to be able to sell it to our friends like India. We believe your nation will benefit from American energy exports and expanding those exports You'll be able to build more, make more, and grow more, but at much lower energy costs. We also want to help India explore its own considerable natural resources, including its offshore natural gas reserves and critical mineral supplies. We have the capacity and we have the desire to help. Moreover, we think energy co-production will help beat unfair competitors in other foreign markets. But India, we believe, can go a long way to enhance energy ties between our nations. And one suggestion I'd have is maybe consider dropping some of the non-tariff barriers for American access to the Indian market. Now, I've talked about this, of course, with Prime Minister Modi. And look, President Trump and I know that Prime Minister Modi is a tough negotiator. He drives a hard bargain. It's one of the reasons why we respect him. And we don't blame Prime Minister Modi for fighting for India's industry. But we do blame American leaders of the past for failing to do the same for our workers. And we believe that we can fix that to the mutual benefit of both the United States and India. Let me give an example. American ethanol, we believe made from the finest corn in the world, can play a tremendous role in enhancing our partnership. And I know our farmers would be delighted to support India's energy security ambitions. We welcome the Modi government's budget announcement to amend India's civil nuclear liability laws, which currently prevent U.S. producers from exporting small modular reactors and building larger U.S.-designed reactors in India. There's much that we can create, much that we can do together. We believe that American energy can help realize India's nuclear power production goals, and this is very important, as well as its AI ambitions. Because as the United States knows well, and I know that India knows well, there is no AI future without energy security and energy dominance. And that brings me to my final point of collaboration. I believe that the technological collaboration between our countries is going to extend well beyond defense and energy. The U.S.-India Trust Initiative that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have launched will be a cornerstone of the partnership in the future. It'll build on billions of dollars of planned investments that American companies have already announced across India. In the years to come, we're going to see data centers, pharmaceuticals, undersea cables, and countless other critical goods being developed and being built because of the American and Indian economic partnership. And I'll say it again, I think that our nations have so much to gain by investing in one another. America investing in India, and of course, India investing in the United States of America. And I know that Americans, our people, are excited about that prospect, and that President Trump and I are looking forward to stronger ties. Americans want further access to Indian markets. This is a great place to do business, and we want to give our people more access to this country. And Indians, we believe, will thrive from greater commerce from the United States. This is very much a win-win partnership. It certainly will be far into the future. And as I know this audience knows better than most, neither Americans nor Indians are alone in looking to scale up their manufacturing capacity. The competition extends well beyond cheap consumer goods and into munitions, energy, infrastructure, and all sorts of other cutting-edge technologies. I believe that if our nations fail to keep pace, the consequences for the Indo-Pacific, but really the consequences for the entire world, will be quite dire. And this, again, is where India and the United States have so much to offer one another. We've got great hardware, the leading artificial intelligence hardware in the world. You have one of the most exciting startup technology infrastructures anywhere in the world. There's a lot to be gained by working together. And this is why President Trump and I both welcome India's leadership in a number of diplomatic organizations, but of course in the Quad. We believe a stronger India means greater economic prosperity, but also greater stability across the Indo-Pacific, which is of course a shared goal for all of us in this room and is a shared goal for both of our countries. Now, I want to close with one last story, or maybe a couple of stories. So, you know, my son Ewan is 7 years old. He's our firstborn son. And yesterday, after we had dinner at the Prime Minister's house, the food was so good and the Prime Minister was so kind to our three children that Ewan came up to me afterwards and he said, "Dad, you know, I think maybe I could live in India." And But I think after about 90 minutes in the Jaipur Sun today at the Great Palace, he suggested that maybe we should move to England. So you take the good with the bad here. But I want to talk about Prime Minister Modi because I think he's a special person. I first met Prime Minister Modi at the AI Action Summit in February, and we had a lot of important discussions on AI and other policies to prepare for. The Prime Minister also managed to figure out that my son Vivek was actually turning 5 years old on the trip. This was in Paris just a couple of months ago. So think about this. Amid a huge international policy conference, he took the time to stop by where I was staying, wish our second son, Vivek, a happy birthday, and even bring him a gift. Ush and I were both genuinely touched by his graciousness, and we've been even more impressed by his warmth since we arrived in India. Now, it's interesting. Some of you may know that when you're a politician, your kids spend almost as much time in the limelight as you do, and the great things about kids is they are brutally honest. They're brutally honest with everybody, whether you want them to be or not. And our 7-year-old, our 5-year-old, and then our 3-year-old baby girl, Mirabelle, it's interesting. They've only really attached themselves to, they've only really liked, I should say, they've only really built a rapport with two world leaders. The first, of course, is President Trump. He just has a certain energy about him. But Prime Minister Modi, it's the exact same thing. Our kids just like him. And I think that because kids are such good, strong of characters, I just like Prime Minister Modi too. And I think it's a great foundation for the future of our relationship. I could tell when Prime Minister Modi came over a couple of months ago, and I believe today that he is a serious leader who has thought deeply about India's future prosperity and security, not just for the rest of his time in office, but over the next century. And I want to end by making a simple overarching point. We are now officially 1/4 into the 21st century, 25 years in 75 years to go. And I really believe that the future of the 21st century is going to be determined by the strength of the United States-India partnership. I believe, thank you. I believe that if India and the United States work together successfully, we are going to see a 21st century that is prosperous and peaceful. But I also believe that if we fail to work together successfully, the 21st century could be a very dark time for all of humanity. So I want to say, it's clear to me, as it is to most observers, that President Trump, of course, intends to rebalance America's economic relationship with the rest of the world. That's going to fundamentally will cause profound changes within our borders in the United States, but of course with other countries as well. But I believe that this rebalancing is going to produce great benefits for American workers. It's going to produce great benefits for the people of India. And because our partnership is so important to the future of the world, I believe President Trump's efforts, joined of course by the whole country of India and Prime Minister Modi, will make the 21st century the best century in human history. Let's do it together. God bless you, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.